All right. Any questions at this point? Can you guys all still hear me? If you can still hear me, raise your hand. Okay. David, Joanna? Have we lost you? Okay, David's hand. Joanna, I can't see. Oh, okay. All right, great. Good. Okay, now let me just make sure I can still hear you. Okay, so let's go on to a sample vocabulary activity. I'll give you a second to orient yourself to the page. And I want you to have a think what might be different about this activity. There's actually quite a lot going on here that tells you about what their underlying aims are with this type of work. It's a little different from your typical vocabulary activity because, so for example, normally you get your words, and over here would be definitions, some kind of matching. Now, this isn't doing that. Instead, it's really moving away from the spoon-feeding type of approach and much closer into the idea of discovery-based frameworks that promote learner autonomy and study skills and encourage interactions that involve skills like negotiation and information exchange. So here, they're also highlighting to students the importance of understanding prefixes and suffixes, looking at these words and getting them to try and figure out what it is they understand about the word, what can they guess about the word, that type of stuff. So it moves away from your more traditional hand-holding idea. A lot of activities also ask students to group keywords and categorize them in some way. All right, so for example here, what is the connection between all the words? There's a few different connections. There's lots of things that students could come up with. But the point being that research has shown the more students build relationships between words and the more they understand about what it means to learn a word, i.e. how to understand the suffix and the prefix and how that actually adds to meaning, there's a lot of evidence to say it's a key element in remembering words and improving memory. Okay, so let's go on to this. Now, another thing that's important to note with this book, well, this example gives you a couple of different things here. So first of all, these are 3 samples taken from Unit 1 from 3 separate books. So you can see this one here, it's Management Studies, Environmental Science, and Law. So one of the things that the books aim to do is take what students already know, to raise the awareness of what they already know, and then make them aware of how that information or that knowledge has to change once they put it into the new context. So this activity, I believe, is one of the very first activities of every unit of every book. So every book is basically identical, but you can see how the context and the vocabulary focus has changed per book. But the actual activity types, the exercises, and the underlying aims of things like presenting discovery-based frameworks and learner autonomy, that is identical across all skills. Okay? All right, so let's go on to look at an example of the listening skills. There's some other underlying learning aims going on here as well. So I'll give you a second to orient yourself to this. Okay, so this is, as you can see up here, extending skills. You've got lecture organization, choosing the best form of notes, and then the next activity is going to be where you actually listen. So based on these, you've got other sub-aims such as prediction, and that's based on the theory that active listening and reading involves the receiver or the listener being ahead of the producer. So the more students are familiar or have some kind of expectation as to the content that's going to come at them, the better they are able to cope with what that information is. Ken, you have a question?
Yeah, if we're going to use audio, where's the audio icon?
Oh, the audio icon isn't on here because this is just the prediction stage.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry. I thought you said we would listen to the disc. Okay.
No, there is an audio symbol, though. You're right. It's actually just below the screen, and it's a little headphones image.
Okay.
So, anytime that there's an activity that requires students to listen, there's a little headphones right next to it. So, but this one here is kind of a precursor to a listening exercise, which is why we can't see the headphones. That coming up is the headphones. Okay. So the other thing as well that the book is really hot on, and I think this is an example of, is the idea of activating schemata. And this is based on research as far back as the 30s, stating that we can really only understand incoming information, written or spoken, if we can fit it into some kind of knowledge or schemata that we already possess. So the idea being that we can really only understand and own or incorporate or absorb new information if we have something it can stick to. It has some other structure or some other content in our heads or in our knowledge base already that we can add it to. So that's why these types of activities of activating schemata, prediction are really, really important, because you're trying to build on what students already know. They're not the kind of tabula rasa. You're not just throwing stuff at them that they have no prior experience of, especially when you get to when students get to the level where they can cope with these types of materials. The third thing that underpins this activity is how much the books focus on working with illustrations, diagrams, and figures. In most disciplines, there are many tasks that ask students to explain or interpret visual information. Not a lot of course books focus on this. A lot of the other EAP resources are a lot denser. A lot of them were originally written for native speakers and then kind of switched into ESL, whereas these ones are very much based on all of the research and all of the practices that have come from, for example, the University of Reading and people working with this series as well. Okay. Let's show you another page here. I think this is fantastic as well. This is another feature that all the books offer, and it's a variety of note-taking skills. Now, there is a clear focus on the Cornell note-taking system. However, what the books do, or what they sensitize students to the fact that not every lecture, not every seminar, etc., is going to be in the same format. So they have to adjust their note-taking strategies and skills to best match whatever content is coming at them. And so all the books have, and again, because I've said that every book pretty much follows the same format, the content will be different in these little boxes. And the content here, and some won't say cattle and USA left gold and that type of stuff. It'll say other things that match that context. But the style of note-taking and the matching activity of this lecture works best with this note is standard across all of the books. Okay, this final activity we're going to look at is reading activity, and it's from English for Banking. I'll give you a second to orient yourself to this. Okay, now one of the things here is quite important. I'm not sure this highlighter makes it that clear, but at least I'll get your eye up here, is the idea of identifying stance and level of confidence by the writer. So you're identifying the writer's stance and the writer's level of confidence in what they're saying, and inferring implicit ideas. So unpacking the content between the sentences, so to speak, in any text that a student is trying to look at. Now, these are a good example of the types of sub-aims, sub-skills that are really, really key elements, but can move away from things such as identifying topic sentences.